pregnant, the maid faced a trap from the Millionaire'S ex-fiancée. The metallic sound of the elevator announced her arrival on the 20th floor of Reynolds Enterprises in Manhattan. Maya chin adjusted the collar of her white shirt, taking a deep breath before taking her first step outside. As the newly promoted CFO, she was still adjusting to the new reality of working directly with Sebastian Reynolds, the company's CEO, and the man who in recent weeks had become much more than her boss. Mr. Reynolds asked you to meet him in the main conference room. Immediately, Rebecca, the executive assistant, had barely finished her sentence, and Maya could already feel her stomach churning. It wasn't nausea, or maybe it was considering that over the last few days her body seemed to be playing tricks on her. Maya crossed the glass-walled corridor, her silhouette reflected in the windows that offered a panoramic view of Manhattan. The paper in her pocket weighed like lead. The result of the pregnancy test she had taken that morning still seemed unreal. Opening the door to the meeting room, Maya froze. Sebastian was not alone. An elegant woman with perfectly groomed red hair and a red dress that looked like it had come straight off the Paris catwalks was leaning over him, her hands resting possessively on his broad shoulders. Sebastian stood up abruptly, his blue eyes meeting hers with a mixture of surprise and discomfort. "I didn't expect. You're early. Darling, aren't you going to introduce me?" The woman smiled, but her green eyes remained as cold as ice. "Maya, this is Victoria Caldwell." Victoria. Maya chin, our financial director. The name hit Maya like a punch in the gut. Victoria Caldwell, Sebastian's ex-fiancée, the one who had left him at the altar 3 years ago to pursue her modeling career in Paris. Maya knew the story. Everyone in the company did. Delighted, Victoria held out her perfectly manicured hand. "Sebastian and I were just reminiscing about old times. Did you know we were engaged?" Victoria, the warning tone in Sebastian's voice was clear. Maya forced a professional smile. "Yes, I was aware. If you'll excuse me, I have some reports to finish." "Actually, Maya, we need to discuss the Morrison project." Sebastian quickly intervened. Victoria was just leaving. "Oh, but I've only just arrived." Victoria pouted, her fingers playing with the diamond bracelet on her wrist. "And I have so much news to share. I've definitely moved back to New York. I got tired of Paris." The air in the room was thick with unresolved tension. Maya felt a wave of dizziness and had to lean discreetly on the meeting table. The paper in her pocket seemed to be burning now. "Maya, are you all right?" Sebastian took a step towards her, genuine concern in his voice. "I'm fine." She straightened her posture, years of corporate training kicking in. "But I really need to go over those figures before the meeting with the shareholders." Before anyone could protest, Maya left the room, her legs shaking slightly. She reached her office and closed the door, finally allowing herself to breathe. The last 6 weeks with Sebastian had been like a dream. Discreet dinners, late-night conversations, stolen moments in his apartment overlooking Central Park. Now, with Victoria back and a baby on the way, everything seemed to be falling apart like a house of cards. "Maya," Sebastian's voice came accompanied by a soft knock on the door. "Can we talk?" She quickly dried a stubborn tear that had escaped. "Come in." Sebastian closed the door behind him, his expression a mixture of concern and guilt. "About Victoria, I didn't know she was coming. It was a complete surprise." "You don't owe me any explanation, Sebastian." Maya forced a smile. "What happened between us? Well, we never defined exactly what it was." "Don't do that." He stepped closer, his intense eyes fixed on her. "Don't diminish what we have. Victoria is the past, you are my present." The words were sweet, but Maya could feel the weight of the secret she was carrying. How to tell him about the baby now, with his ex-fiancée back in town, clearly determined to win him back? "I need time," Maya finally said, "to process all this." Sebastian looked like he wanted to say something else, but his phone started ringing insistently. "Meeting with the investors," he sighed. "But this conversation isn't over, Maya." As soon as he left, Maya collapsed into a chair, her hands instinctively going to her still flat stomach. Somewhere in the building, Victoria Caldwell was probably already planning her next move, and Maya knew with a certainty that frightened her that the next few weeks would be a battle, not just for Sebastian's heart, but for the very happiness she had begun to build. The afternoon sun was beginning to set over Manhattan, painting the sky with orange hues that were reflected in the windows of the skyscrapers. Maya watched the city that never sleeps, wondering how her own story would unfold against this backdrop of glass and steel, love and ambition, truths and lies. Maya stared at her reflection in the executive bathroom mirror, her hands trembling as she held up the pregnancy test. It was the third one she had taken that week, and the result remained the same, positive. The clock on the wall read 5:45 p.m., and most of the staff had already left the office, giving her a moment of privacy to process her new reality. "Ms. Chun." Rebecca's voice on the other side of the door startled her. "Mr. Reynolds requests your presence in his office in 5 minutes." He Mention that it's urgent. Thank you, Rebecca. I'll be right there. Maya put the test in her bag, adjusted her navy blazer, and took a deep breath, trying to regain her professional composure. The walk to Sebastian's office seemed longer than usual. Through the glass walls, she could see Victoria sitting comfortably in the leather armchair. As if she already owned the place, Sebastian was standing fiddling nervously with his navy blue tie, a gesture Maya knew well meant he was uncomfortable. Maya, I'm so glad you could make it. Sebastian cracked a strained smile. Victoria was just sharing some concerns about the Morrison project. Victoria crossed her legs elegantly, her red dress riding up slightly. Actually, darling, I was explaining how my contacts in Paris could be crucial to the international expansion of Reynolds Enterprises. Maya kept her expression neutral. Years of difficult negotiations finally coming in handy. Interesting. And what would your experience with international mergers and acquisitions be, Ms. Caldwell? Victoria's smile faltered for a moment. Well, as an international model, I've developed an extensive network of contacts in the business world, plus my family. Maya, Sebastian interrupted, clearly trying to avoid a confrontation. Victoria suggested attending the meeting with the investors tomorrow, considering your contacts. Absolutely not. The firmness in Maya's voice surprised even herself. With all due respect, Mr. Reynolds, this meeting involves confidential financial information and sensitive corporate strategies. It would not be appropriate to have an outsider present. Victoria stood up gracefully, her Christian Louboutin heels echoing on the marble floor. Darling, perhaps your director of finance isn't seeing the whole picture. My presence could open doors. That at that moment a wave of nausea hit Maya full force. She staggered slightly, leaning on Sebastian's desk. Maya. Sebastian rushed to support her, his concern evident. Are you all right? I'm fine. She tried to pull herself together, but her face was pale. I just didn't have lunch today. Oh, you poor thing. Victoria's condescending tone was palpable. Sebastian, perhaps you should consider whether your team is really prepared to deal with the pressures of an international expansion. Maya felt her blood boil, but before she could reply, her phone vibrated. It was a message from her doctor confirming her appointment for the following morning. The reality of her situation hit her again with full force. If you'll excuse me, Maya straightened up, regaining her professional posture. I have a video conference with our partners in Chicago in 10 minutes. Sebastian looked divided, his blue eyes alternating between Maya and Victoria. We can reschedule the conference. That won't be necessary. Maya forced a smile. Miss Caldwell, it's been a pleasure. Mr. Reynolds, the updated reports will be on your desk in the morning. Leaving the room, Maya could feel Victoria's gaze burning into her back in her office. She finally allowed a few tears to escape. Her phone vibrated again. This time was a message from Sebastian. Can we talk after work, please? Maya wiped away her tears, looking out of the window at the Manhattan skyline. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, a dramatic contrast to the whirlwind of emotions inside her. On her desk, in addition to the financial reports and spreadsheets, there was a discreet photo of her with Sebastian, taken during an informal dinner a few weeks ago. They looked so happy, so carefree now, with a baby on the way, and Victoria back. The future seemed uncertain. Maya picked up her phone and answered Sebastian's message. It won't be possible today. I have a medical appointment early tomorrow morning. She knew she needed to tell him about the pregnancy, but with Victoria clearly up to something, the timing couldn't be worse. Sebastian deserved to know that he was going to be a father, but Maya also needed to protect her heart, and now her babies too. As she organized her documents to leave, Maya could hear Victoria's laughter echoing down the corridor. Sebastian's ex-fiancée clearly had no intention of making things easy, but Maya was no longer just the competent financial director of Reynolds Enterprises. She was a mother to, and that changed everything. With renewed determination, Maya began to plan her next steps. First, the doctor's appointment to officially confirm her pregnancy. Then she would need to find the right moment to tell Sebastian, preferably before Victoria could do any more damage. What Maya didn't know was that at that very moment Victoria was making a phone call that would change the course of all her careful preparations. Maya adjusted herself in the chair in the doctor's office, her heart racing as Dr. Andrea Martinez analyzed the test results. The silence in the room was broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional click of the mouse as the doctor browsed through the images on her computer. Well, Maya, the results confirm it. You're 8 weeks pregnant. Dr. Martinez smiled gently. The baby looks healthy, and all the indicators are normal. The official confirmation made Maya instinctively put her hands to her belly. 8 weeks, exactly when she and Sebastian had started their discreet relationship, after that business dinner that extended far beyond professional discussions. I'm going to prescribe some prenatal vitamins, the doctor continued. And I'd like to see you again in 4 weeks for the morphological ultrasound. Maya nodded mechanically, her mind already anticipating the complications to come. Her phone vibrated. It was Rebecca, Sebastian's assistant. Emergency meeting at 10 a.m. Attendance required. Looking at her watch, Maya realized that she only had 45 minutes to get across Manhattan to the office. She thanked Dr. Martinez and hurried out, catching a cab on Park Avenue on the way. Another SMS arrived, this time from an unknown number. Lovely to meet you yesterday. How about a coffee? We need to talk about Sebastian. Victoria. Maya felt her stomach turn, and it wasn't just because of her pregnancy. Victoria was up to something that was obvious. The question was what arriving at Reynolds Enterprises. Maya immediately noticed that something was wrong. The eyes of the employees followed her as she crossed the lobby, some with pity, others with ill-concealed curiosity. Rebecca intercepted her before she reached the meeting room. You need to know Victoria is spreading rumors. What kind of rumors? She's insinuating that you manipulated the figures for the Morrison project to impress Sebastian. Rebecca lowered her voice. And there's more. She showed some emails supposedly exchanged between you and a competitor's executive. Maya felt her blood run cold. That's impossible. I've never. Everyone who knows you knows it's a lie, Rebecca assured her. But Victoria has influence, and Sebastian seems confused. Before Maya could reply, the doors to the meeting room opened. Sebastian stood there, his expression unreadable next to Victoria, who sported a triumphant smile. Maya, please join us, Sebastian said formally, his voice distant. The room was full. Board members, company lawyers, and even Richard Morrison himself, the client whose project was at the center of the controversy. Ms. Chun began, one of the lawyers. Certain irregularities in the Morrison project's financial reports have come to our attention. Ms. Caldwell has kindly brought some worrying evidence. Victoria slid a folder across the table. Just doing my civic duty, she said sweetly. After all, the reputation of Reynolds Enterprises is at stake. Maya opened the folder with steady hands, years of experience in corporate crises, maintaining her composure. The documents were a mixture of fabricated emails and altered financial reports, a sophisticated setup, but a setup. Nonetheless, this is ridiculous, Maya declared, her voice calm but firm. Any basic analysis of the company's servers will prove that these emails are fake. For the reports, I have all the original versions archived with digital authentication. Sebastian finally looked directly at her, a spark of hope in his eyes. Can you prove it? Right away, Maya picked up her tablet, accessing the company's secure system. In addition, Mr. Morrison can confirm that all our communications have been made through official company channels. Richard Morrison snorted. In fact, there has never been any irregular communication with Ms. Chan. Our legal department keeps meticulous records. Victoria paled slightly, but recovered quickly. But what about the secret meetings, the off-the-record meetings? Do you mean how that folder came into your hands, Ms. Caldwell? Maya countered. Because accessing and manipulating confidential company documents is a serious violation of the criminal code. The silence that followed was deafening. Sebastian stood up, his expression now a mixture of anger and disappointment, although Maya didn't know who they were directed at. I think we need a break, he announced. Maya, please stay. Victoria will talk later. As the room emptied, Maya felt a familiar wave of nausea. The stress of the situation combined with her pregnancy was taking its toll. Sebastian noticed her pallor. Maya, are you all right? We need to talk, she said softly. In private. Sebastian closed the door to the meeting room, leaving them alone. The morning sun streamed through the windows, creating patterns of light on the gray carpet. I should have trusted you straight away, he began, but Victoria turned up with those documents and I'm pregnant. Maya interrupted, the words escaping before she lost her nerve. Sebastian froze, his blue eyes wide. What? 8 weeks? I just checked with my doctor this morning. The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Outside, Manhattan continued its frenetic pace, oblivious to the drama unfolding on the 20th floor of Reynolds Enterprises. Maya, Sebastian began, but was interrupted by a knock on the door. Mr. Reynolds, it was Rebecca. I'm sorry, but the board is waiting for instructions on how to proceed with the situation. Maya stood up, adjusting her blazer. You have a company to run, I have reports to organize, and apparently, she touched her belly lightly. We have a lot more to talk about. As she walked back to her office, Maya could feel the weight of the last 24 hours on her shoulders. Victoria had shown her cards, but the game was far from over. And now, with a baby on the way, the stakes were even higher. Sebastian's office remained silent as he stared at his computer screen, rereading for the 10th time the emails. Victoria had presented something didn't add up. He had known Maya for years, long before their personal relationship began, and her integrity had always been unwavering. Mr. Reynolds. Rebecca entered hesitantly. I've gained access to the original server records you requested. Sebastian took the folder his assistant offered, his eyes quickly scanning the documents. The evidence was clear. The emails presented by Victoria had been fabricated. One more thing, Rebecca continued, her voice low. I found this on the security footage from the parking lot. The video showed Victoria meeting secretly with James Porter, a former employee fired 6 months ago for leaking confidential information to competitors. When was this? 2 days before she filed the charges against Maya. Sebastian felt his stomach turn. Maya's words echoed in his mind. I'm pregnant, 8 weeks his child, and he had almost allowed Victoria to destroy everything with her manipulations. On the other side of the floor, Maya was in her office, methodically organizing the evidence that would prove her innocence. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed, not from fear, but from restrained, angry years of building her professional reputation, almost destroyed in a matter of hours. Maya, Sebastian's voice surprised her. She hadn't heard him come in. Sebastian, No, he interrupted her, closing the door behind him. Let me speak first. I've been an idiot. I should have trusted you from the start. Maya watched as he placed the evidence Rebecca had found on his desk. Victoria is working with James Porter, the same James who tried to sabotage the merger with Tech Solutions last year. Sebastian nodded, running his hands through his hair in frustration. She's trying to destabilize the company, and she used our story to manipulate me. Why? Maya asked, although she already suspected the answer. My father's will. Sebastian moved closer to the window, watching the city below. He left the specific clause: if I married Victoria, she would be entitled to 30% of the company's shares. Maya felt her heart squeeze. And now that she's back, she's discovered that she'll definitely lose. That right, if I marry someone else. He turned to face her. Maya, about the baby. At that moment, the office door opened abruptly. Victoria walked in, her normally composed face now contorted in fury. How dare you, she hissed at Maya. First you try to steal my place in the company, and now you invent a pregnancy to trap Sebastian. Maya stood up, her voice dangerously calm. Don't make me repeat the evidence we have against you, Victoria. Falsifying corporate documents is a federal crime. You don't understand. Victoria laughed bitterly. I built my whole life around the future I should have with Sebastian. 3 years in Paris developing contacts, preparing to take my place here, and then you show up. Enough, Victoria. Sebastian's voice cut through the air like steel. You have 1 hour to leave the building. If you ever go near Maya or Reynolds Enterprises again, the evidence of your conspiracy with James Porter will go straight to the FBI. Victoria paled. Sebastian, you can't. I can and I will. He opened the door, gesturing for her to come out. It's over, Victoria, this time forever. After Victoria left, a heavy silence filled the office. Maya sat down again, suddenly exhausted. You need to rest, Sebastian said softly, kneeling beside her chair. Let's go home. Home. My apartment or yours, wherever you feel most comfortable. He took her hands between his. Maya, I know I've done everything wrong in the last few days, but I want to do it right now for you, for our baby, for our future. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. Sebastian, I don't want you to stay with me just because of the baby. That's not why. He touched her face gently. I've been in love with you for months. The baby is an unexpected miracle, but you're the choice my heart made long before I knew about it. Outside, the sun was beginning to set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Maya looked at Sebastian, seeing in his eyes all the sincerity and love she needed. Let's go home, she agreed softly as they packed their things to leave. Maya knew there would still be challenges ahead. Victoria might be out of the picture, but the pregnancy, their relationship, everything was still new and fragile. However, for the first time in days, she felt hope. Sebastian intertwined his fingers with hers in the elevator, and Maya realized that sometimes the biggest storms bring with them the most beautiful transformations, and there in the heart of Manhattan, her own love story was just beginning to blossom. Sebastian's apartment on the Upper East Side reflected the golden light of dusk. As Maya walked through the lobby, her work bag still slung over her shoulder. The last 48 hours had been an emotional roller coaster, and finally being there in a safe space made her shoulders relax for the first time in days. I asked Margaret to prepare something light for us to eat, Sebastian commented, guiding her to the gourmet kitchen. Did the doctor mention any dietary restrictions? Maya couldn't help but smile a little at his concern. Just the first trimester basics, no alcohol, limit caffeine. I've already canceled the meeting room coffee, he replied promptly, causing Maya to arch an eyebrow. What, I've been researching pregnancy all afternoon? The confession made him seem even more adorable in her eyes. Margaret, the housekeeper, who had worked for Sebastian for years, served him vegetable soup and freshly baked wholemeal bread before discreetly leaving. Sebastian, Maya began, playing with her spoon. We need to talk about how we're going to deal with this at the office. The board I've already spoken to our legal department, he interrupted her gently. There's no policy against relationships between employees as long as they're properly declared as for Victoria. I got a message from Rebecca. She was seen leaving the building with all her things an hour ago. Sebastian relaxed visibly. Good, tomorrow I'll issue an official statement about the attempted fraud. Her name won't be mentioned, but the message will be clear. Maya nodded, but something still bothered her. What about James Porter? He could still cause problems. Our lawyers are already preparing legal action against him. Sebastian stood up, walking over to the panoramic window. But there's something else worrying you, isn't there? It was amazing how well he could read her. Maya joined him at the window, watching the lights of Manhattan begin to glow against the darkening sky. My parents, she admitted, they're traditionalists, and could baby out of wedlock with my boss. She laughed humorlessly. Let's just say it's not going to be an easy conversation. Sebastian turned to her, his blue eyes intense. What if it wasn't out of wedlock? Maya felt her heart stop. What? This isn't how I planned to do it, he admitted, pulling something out of his trouser pocket. Actually, I bought this 2 weeks ago before all this madness started. A small blue velvet box rested in his hand. Maya, Chinyo transformed my life from the first moment you entered it, first as the brilliant financial analyst who saved 3 important projects in her first month, then as the most carbon financial director we've ever had, and finally as the woman who made me believe in true love again. He opened the box, revealing a delicate platinum ring with a single diamond. I'm not asking because of the baby, I'm asking because I can't imagine spending another day of my life without you by my side. Will you marry me? Maya felt tears run down her face. Did you plan this before you found out about the pregnancy? The ring has been in my pocket for 2 weeks, he confessed. I was waiting for the perfect moment, and you think now, after all this drama with Victoria, is the perfect moment? Sebastian smiled. I think surviving this storm together has only proved that we can face anything, so yes, I think it's perfect. Maya looked at the ring, then at the man in front of her, the man who had just faced his past. To protect his future, yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. The kiss that followed was interrupted by the sound of Maya's cell phone. It was a message from Rebecca. Sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know Victoria has just posted on social media that she's leaving New York. It looks like she's got a contract in Milan. Good, Sebastian murmured against Maya's hair. The further away the better. We still have a lot to sort out. Maya reminded him. The announcement to the council, telling our families, organizing a wedding, and preparing the baby's room. Sebastian added, his hand resting gently on Maya's still flat belly. But we can solve all this together, one step at a time. That night, lying in Sebastian's arms, Maya thought about how life could change so quickly. Just a few days ago, she had been terrified of the idea of raising a baby on her own. Now, she not only had the support of the man she loved, but also a bright future ahead of her. The ring on her finger glowed softly in the moonlight coming through the window. Outside, Manhattan continued its frenetic pace, but here at this moment everything was perfectly at peace. The news of Sebastian Reynolds' engagement to so spread through Reynolds Enterprises like wildfire. Through dry straw the morning after the proposal, Maya noticed the curious glances and whispers as she crossed the lobby of the building, the delicate platinum ring gleaming discreetly on her left hand. The board members have requested an extraordinary meeting for this afternoon, Rebecca informed Maya as soon as she reached her office. And there are 3 reporters from the Wall Street Journal trying to get a statement on Victoria Caldwell's son departure. Maya took a deep breath, unconsciously adjusting the folder in her hands. Any news on James Porter? Our lawyers got a preliminary injunction against him this morning. He's forbidden to go near the building or make any contact with company employees. Maya's phone vibrated. It was a message from her mother. I saw the photos of Victoria Caldwell leaving New York on social media. Is there anything you want to tell me, daughter? Before she could answer, Sebastian appeared at her office door, looking impeccable in his navy suit, but with dark circles under his eyes that indicated a restless night. My parents are coming from Boston, he announced without preamble. They want to have dinner with us tonight. Maya felt her stomach turn, and it wasn't just because of her pregnancy. Margaret and William Reynolds were practically royalty in Boston, known as much for their ancient fortune as for their strict expectations. Maybe we should tell my parents first, Maya suggested, thinking of her own parents in San Francisco. They're more traditionalists, Sebastian added with an understanding smile. Maya, we need to face this head on. Besides, after the fiasco with Victoria, my parents deserve to know that I've finally found someone who really cares about the company and me, not necessarily in that order. The day passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and preparations. The legal department drew up an official statement about the engagement, carefully worded to emphasize their transparency and professionalism. The board, although initially surprised, seemed more concerned about the last quarter's figures than their CEO's personal relationship. At 7 in the evening, Maya found herself in the private elevator leading to Sebastian's apartment. Her navy blue dress, chosen specifically to impress the future in-laws. "They'll love you," Sebastian whispered, squeezing her hand reassuringly as the doors opened. Margaret Reynolds, elegant in a Chanel ensemble, was the first to rise to greet them. Her shrewd eyes immediately noticed the ring on Maya's fingers. "So it's true," she commented, her voice neutral. "Sebastian has finally moved on." William Reynolds, still imposing at 70, remained seated in his favorite armchair. "I imagine Victoria didn't take the news well." "Actually, Dad," Sebastian began, his hand firmly on Maya's back, "we discovered that Victoria was involved in an attempted fraud against the company." The silence that followed was heavy. Margaret brought her glass of wine to her lips, while William studied Maya with renewed interest. "The financial reports for the last quarter were exceptional," he commented casually. "Your work, I presume, Ms. Chen." "Maya, please," she corrected softly. "And yes, we implemented some strategic changes that resulted in a significant increase in efficiency." "Interesting." William leaned forward. "And now you plan to implement strategic changes in my son's life too?" "Dad," Sebastian protested, but Maya put a hand on his arm. "Mr. Reynolds," she began, her voice firm despite her nervousness, "I love your son and the company your family has built. I'm not here to implement changes, but to build a future together." Margaret exchanged a meaningful glance with her husband. "And that future includes a baby, I presume?" Maya and Sebastian froze. "How?" "Darling, I'm a mother of 3. Margaret smiled for the first time that evening. "I recognize the signs. Besides, you haven't touched your wine glass since we arrived." William stood up, walking over to the window. "Victoria would never have given Sebastian what he really needs, a partner, not a trophy." He turned to the couple. "Welcome to the family, Maya." The rest of the evening flowed more smoothly. Margaret shared embarrassing stories from Sebastian's childhood, while William subtly tested Maya's knowledge of financial markets and corporate strategies. Later, when the Reynolds seniors said goodbye, Margaret hugged Maya unexpectedly. "Take care of him," she whispered. "And my first grandchild alone at last." Maya collapsed on the sofa, kicking off her heels. "That was surprisingly well," Sebastian added, loosening his tie. "I think breaking the clause in the will about Victoria was the best thing I've ever done." Maya frowned. "What exactly did that clause say?" "That if I married Victoria by the age of 35, she would be entitled to 30% of the shares. Otherwise, those shares would be converted into a charity fund." He smiled. "I'll be 35 next month. So Victoria came back because of that?" "Probably, but she found something much better." Us. Maya touched her still flat belly, thinking about how to tell her parents. But now, with the Reynolds' support and Sebastian's love, she felt stronger to face any challenge. "I'll call my parents tomorrow," she decided. "They deserve to know in person, not on social media." Sebastian pulled her into his arms. Together, she confirmed, snuggling into his chest. Outside, Manhattan glowed under the night sky, a silent witness to yet another chapter in this love story that against all odds was blossoming in the heart of the city that never sleeps. The traditional Chinese restaurant in the heart of Chinatown was exceptionally crowded. That Friday night, Maya adjusted the jade necklace her mother had given her for her 21st birthday, while Sebastian parked the car a few blocks ahead. "Are you sure you don't want me to go along?" Sebastian asked, for the third time, noticing the tension in Maya's shoulders. "I need to do this alone first," she replied, squeezing his hand. "My parents are different when they're alone with their family. And after what happened to my older sister?" Maya had never told Sebastian the full story, but her sister Jessica had been practically disowned for getting pregnant before marriage 10 years ago. Family relations had only recently begun to heal. The Golden Palace, a restaurant owned by the Chun family for 3 generations, was exactly as Maya remembered it. The traditional red lanterns, the scent of spices in the air, and her mother Linda Chin overseeing every detail with military precision. "Mama," Maya called softly in Mandarin, approaching the main counter. Linda Chin raised her eyes from the accounting books, her reading glasses delicately balanced on the tip of her nose. "Are you finally decided to visit us? Your father's in the kitchen." Maya followed her mother through the busy restaurant to the private area at the back where her father, Robert Chun, was supervising the preparation of the main dishes. "Baba," Maya greeted, receiving a brief nod of recognition. When they finally sat down at a reserved table away from the prying eyes of the customers, Maya felt the weight of generations of expectations on her shoulders. So Linda began pouring tea for everyone. "I saw on the news that Reynolds Enterprises is going through some interesting changes. Actually, that's what I'm here to talk about. Maya took a deep breath. Sebastian Reynolds and I were engaged. The silence that followed was deafening. Robertson slowly put down his hashies while Linda kept her teacup suspended in the air. The same Sebastian Reynolds who was engaged to that model, Linda asked, her voice controlled. Mama, it's more complicated than that. Victoria tried to sabotage the company and now he's decided that our daughter is a better option. Robert interrupted, his voice carrying decades of pride and concern. It's not like that. Maya felt tears forming but held them back. We fell in love naturally working together, and she instinctively touched her belly, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by her mother. Linda turned pale. Don't tell me you're 8 weeks, Maya confirmed softly. And before you think the worst, Sebastian proposed to me before he knew I was pregnant. Robert Chen stood up, abruptly muttering something in Mandarin. Before retreating to the kitchen, Linda remained seated, her hands trembling slightly as she poured more tea. Your sister called last week, she finally said. Jessica is pregnant again, this time married and settled. Her father has finally started talking to her again. Mama, let me finish. Linda held up a hand. When Jessica got pregnant, the first time, we acted out of fear, afraid of what people would say, afraid of losing face in a community. We lost precious years with our daughter and grandson because of pride. Maya watched her mother take off her glasses and wipe away a discreet tear. You were always our prudent daughter, Linda continued, the one who planned everything, who never gave us a worry. I confess that when I saw the news about Victoria Colville, I was worried, but now I see that my prudent daughter has finally followed her heart. Linda took Maya's hands in hers. Sebastian Reynolds may be an important man, but is he worthy of you? He is, Mama, more than I can explain. Linda nodded slowly. Your father will need time, but we won't make the same mistakes we made with Jessica. She squeezed Maya's hands. When can we meet him properly? He's waiting in the car, Maya admitted, a small smile forming. He didn't want to come uninvited. Respectful, Linda observed approvingly. Go and get him, I'll talk to your father. When Maya left the restaurant, she found Sebastian leaning against the car, anxious. How was it? Better than I expected with my mother, my father. It'll take time. She entwined her fingers in his. They want to meet you now. Sebastian nervously adjusted his tie. Should I know something specific about etiquette? Be yourself. Maya smiled, guiding him towards the restaurant. But maybe avoid mentioning that you already know the Chinese cuisine at P.F. Chang's. As they entered the Golden Palace, Maya saw her father watching discreetly from the kitchen. Linda Chun had already prepared a table with the best dishes in the house, and the look of approval she cast at the ring on Maya's finger didn't go unnoticed. It was a small step, but an important one in Manhattan. Old and new traditions were constantly mixing, creating something unique and special. Maya knew that her own story was following the same path of fusion of worlds, cultures, and expectations that somehow felt perfectly right. The news of Sebastian Reynolds' engagement to Maya Chen dominated the financial headlines that week. The Wall Street Journal ran an extensive story on Maya's meteoric rise at Reynolds Enterprises, while the New York Post speculated on a dramatic breakup with Victoria Caldwell. Ignore the tabloids, Sebastian muttered, removing the newspaper from Maya's hands during breakfast in their apartment. They don't know anything about us. Maya nodded, although her eyes remained fixed on the photo of Victoria in Milan, posing next to a famous Italian businessman. The caption hinted at a new romance, but something about her ex-rival's calculated smile made her uneasy. The legal department has finalized the documents on the attempted fraud. Maya changed the subject, stirring her ginger tea, her latest solution to morning nausea. James Porter has agreed to testify against Victoria in exchange for immunity. Sebastian frowned. Has he provided any useful information? Apparently Victoria started planning all this months before she returned to New York. Maya hesitated, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. She had access to inside information about the company through a contact on the board, Richard Morrison. The name dropped like a bomb in the quiet atmosphere of the morning. Richard Morrison was not only a respected member of the board, but also one of Sebastian's father's oldest friends. Impossible. Sebastian stood up, starting to pace around the kitchen. Richard is practically family. Why does he? Money, Maya replied simply. Victoria promised to share her share of the shares with him if she managed to marry you before the wills deadline. Sebastian's phone rang, interrupting the conversation. It was Rebecca. Mr. Reynolds, I'm sorry to disturb you so early, but Mr. Morrison is here. He wants a private meeting. Sebastian exchanged a meaningful glance with Maya. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I'll go with you, Maya declared, standing up. Maya, in your condition, I'm pregnant, not disabled. She cut him off, a flash of determination in her eyes. Besides, as CFO, I have every right to be present when we discuss possible Corporate fraud. An hour later, Maya was watching Richard Morrison across the meeting table at Reynolds Enterprises. The 60-year-old man seemed to have aged a decade since she had last seen him. Sebastian, Maya, he began, his voice tired. I imagine you already know why I'm here. That depends, Sebastian replied coldly. Are you here as a friend of the family or as a conspirator? Morrison winced visibly. I deserve that, but I need you to understand Victoria didn't give me a choice. There's always a choice, Maya interjected, her voice calm but firm. You chose to betray the trust of this company. My daughter. Morrison ran his hands over his face. Clara's cancer. The experimental treatments are extremely expensive, and Victoria promised. Sebastian paled. Claire, Morrison was his childhood friend. Why didn't you come to me? You know we would have helped. Shame, perhaps pride, certainly. Morrison took an envelope out of a briefcase. Here's my letter of resignation from the council, and this, he placed a USB stick on the table, contains all the communications between Victoria and me, including her future plans. Maya picked up the flash drive carefully. Future plans. She hasn't given up. Sebastian, the will may be running out, but Victoria has a plan B, something involving a bigger scandal, something that could force a change in the company's leadership. Sebastian felt his blood run cold. What kind of scandal? I don't know the details. She kept that part secret. But she mentioned something about revealing Reynolds' family's secrets that could destroy the company's reputation. Maya observed the tension in Sebastian's shoulders, recognizing the signs of his growing anxiety. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to need you to officially document all of this with our legal department. I'll do what's necessary, he nodded, standing up heavily. And Sebastian, I'm sorry for everything. After Morrison left, Sebastian remained silent for long minutes, staring at the city through the windows of his living room. She won't give up, he finally said. Victoria was always obsessive when she wanted something. Maya moved closer, entwining her fingers in his. Then we'll face it together. Whatever secret she thinks she is, they can't be worse than her own actions. Maya. Sebastian turned to face her, concern evident in his blue eyes. What if she tries something against you, against the baby? That's why we have an excellent legal team and enough evidence to keep her away. Maya smiled softly. Besides, I think you underestimated the determination of a pregnant woman protecting her family. The comment drew a small smile from Sebastian. Your family, how are your parents coping with all this? My mother called last night. She wants to organize a traditional engagement dinner at the restaurant. Apparently, you've impressed her with your knowledge of different types of tea. Years of business meetings in Asia finally coming in handy, he joked, pulling her closer. Maya, no matter what Victoria is planning, I won't let her hurt our family. Maya rested her head on his chest, the sound of his heart beating strong and steady, calming her. Outside Manhattan continued its frenetic pace, oblivious to the drama unfolding at the top of that skyscraper. But inside that room, for a moment, there was just the two of them and the silent promise to face whatever storm came together. The snow was beginning to fall softly over Manhattan when Sebastian found the old box of documents in his father's office. It was a Saturday afternoon, and he had decided to sort through some old Reynolds Enterprises files after Richard Morrison's words about family secrets kept echoing in his mind. Found anything interesting? Maya asked, entering the room with 2 cups of tea. Her oversized sweater barely disguised the small curve that was beginning to form in her belly. Maybe, Sebastian replied, lifting up a yellowed folder. These are documents from when my father first met Victoria. Maya sat down next to him on the floor, surrounded by piles of papers. You never told me how they met because I never fully understood, Sebastian admitted, opening the folder. Victoria came into our lives when I was 24. Suddenly my father was insisting that she would be perfect for me and for the future of the company. As they examined the documents, a pattern began to emerge. There were records of substantial bank transfers from Reynolds Enterprises to a company called Caldwell Industries, now defunct. Victoria's father, Maya murmured, her financially trained eyes detecting something in the transactions. Those transfers looked more like payments than investments. Sebastian frowned, picking up another document. It was a handwritten letter from Victoria's father to William Reynolds. The agreement remains as agreed. Your reputation is safe as long as my daughter takes your promised place in the family. Blackmail. Maya whispered, her hand finding Sebastian's. Victoria wasn't just after the money from the will, she was fulfilling some kind of agreement between the families. Just then Sebastian's phone rang. It was his mother, Margaret. Sebastian, darling, we need to talk. Your father, he's not well. 30 minutes later, they were in New York Presbyterian Hospital. William Reynolds had suffered a mild heart attack, but was stable. Margaret met them in the corridor, looking years older under the fluorescent lights. He confessed everything, Margaret said without preamble, about Victoria, about the deal with the Caldwell. She turned to Maya. You deserve to know what you're getting into, darling. Inside the private room, William Reynolds was sitting on the bed looking smaller and more fragile than Maya had ever seen him. "You found the documents," he said, not asking. "What's the deal, Dad?" Sebastian demanded, trying to control his anger. "Why force a marriage on Victoria?" William sighed heavily. 25 years ago, I did something that almost destroyed this family." Victoria's father, Charles Caldwell, had proof the deal was simple. He would keep my secret if I ensured that his daughter became part of the Reynolds family. "What kind of secret would justify manipulating your own child's life?" Maya asked softly. William hesitated, looking at Margaret, who nodded encouragingly. "I have another son. Before I married your mother, I had an affair with an employee of the company. She got pregnant, and I paid for her to disappear." Charles Caldwell found out about it. The silence that followed was as heavy as lead. Sebastian had moved away from the bed, his hands clenched in a fist. "So Victoria knew all this time?" "She found out a few years ago when she found the document in her father's office," Margaret replied. "That's when she started pushing harder for the marriage." Maya watched the scene unfold, her heart broken by the pain evident in Sebastian's eyes. "That's why the will declares about the shares." William nodded. "It was my way of ensuring that the agreement would be kept. But then Sebastian met you, and Victoria, she went mad." "Where is he?" Sebastian asked abruptly. "My brother, Chicago," Margaret replied, surprising everyone. "His name is Michael Harrison. I started looking for him a few months ago when I realized that this whole story with Victoria was going to come up again." Maya approached Sebastian, wrapping his hand in hers. He was trembling slightly. "Why now?" he asked his parents. "Why tell all this now?" "Because Victoria threatened to expose everything publicly," William explained. "Not just about Michael, but about other questionable deals I made to cover up his existence. It could destroy not only our reputation, but the company itself." "Let her try," Maya stated firmly, surprising everyone. "Reynolds Enterprises is no longer just about secrets from the past. It's about the future. We're building a future based on honesty and integrity." Margaret smiled slightly. "She's right, William. It's about time we faced up to our mistakes." Sebastian finally turned to his father. "I want to meet you, Michael. Does he know about me?" "No," William admitted, "but maybe it's time to change that too." Maya watched the Reynolds family begin the painful process of healing, knowing that the revelations of that day were only the beginning. Victoria might have planned to use these secrets as a weapon, but perhaps inadvertently, she had given them all the chance to finally face the truth. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering Manhattan in a blanket of white that seemed to promise a new beginning for Maya, who carried her own promise of the future. It was clear that sometimes the darkest secrets need to come to light before true healing can begin. Maya's apartment in Greenwich Village was silent that Sunday morning, except for the soft sound of her typing rapidly on her laptop. After the revelations at the hospital, she had plunged into a thorough investigation of Michael Harrison, Sebastian's hitherto unknown half-brother. "I found something," she muttered, causing Sebastian to abandon his coffee cup halfway through. "Michael Harrison is CFO of a technology company in Chicago, Harvard Business School, same year as you." Sebastian leaned over her shoulder, looking at the photo of a man who shared his characteristic blue eyes. "He could have been my classmate, and I never knew." "There's more," Maya continued, opening another file. "He donated a significant amount to stem cell research last year, the same area that Reynolds Enterprises is investing in." As if our paths were destined to cross somehow, Sebastian reflected, his voice laden with restrained emotion. Maya's phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Linda Chun. "Mama, yes, we're free for dinner tonight." She paused, listening. "No, we haven't chosen a date for the wedding yet with everything that's going on." Sebastian watched his fiancée alternate between English and Mandarin, noticing how she unconsciously stroked her belly as she spoke. It was a gesture that had become frequent in recent weeks, and one that always made him smile. "My mother insists on starting the wedding preparations," Maya explained after hanging up. "Apparently having a baby outside the wedding is one thing, but postponing the ceremony is unacceptable." "Maybe she's right," Sebastian replied, surprising her. With Victoria threatening to expose family secrets, and this whole situation with Michael, maybe we need something positive to focus on. Maya studied his face for a moment. "Are you okay with all this?" "Honestly, I don't know." Sebastian stood up, walking over to the window, overlooking the bustling Washington Square Park. "My whole life has been built on lies." "The will, Victoria. Now, Michael, sometimes I wonder if there are more secrets waiting to explode." "Hey," Maya hugged him from behind, resting her head between his shoulder blades. "Your life wasn't built on lies. It was built on your hard work, your integrity, your own choices." "How can I face Victoria publicly?" Sebastian turned to face her as she exposes everything Then we'll face it together. Michael Harrison seems like a respectable man. Maybe he doesn't even want to be part of this drama. Sebastian's phone vibrated. It was a message from his mother with Michael's number. Margaret had finally found a way to contact him directly. "You should call him," Maya suggested softly, "and say what? Hi, I'm your younger brother. I'm sorry our father abandoned you. How about starting with the truth that you've just found out about him and would like to talk?" Sebastian stared at the number for long moments before finally pressing the dial button. 3 rings later, a professional voice answered. "Michael Harrison." "Mr. Harrison, this is Sebastian Reynolds." There was a pause on the other end of the line from Reynolds Enterprises. "Yes, but this is a personal call." Sebastian took a deep breath, feeling Maya's hand squeeze in support. "I think we need to talk about William Reynolds." Another silence, longer this time. "So he finally told you?" Michael replied, his voice controlled. "I was wondering when it would happen. You knew about me. A few years ago my mother told me everything on her deathbed. A pause. "I never wanted to cause trouble for your family, so I kept my distance." "What if I said I'd like to change that?" Sebastian proposed, his voice betraying his emotion. "I'm engaged. I'm going to be a father. Maybe it's time our family stopped living with secrets." "I'll be in New York next week," Michael replied after a moment. "Maybe we can have coffee after the call ended." Sebastian remained silent for several minutes, processing what had happened. Maya watched him, attentively respecting his space. "He seems normal," Sebastian finally commented, almost laughing at the simplicity of the observation. "What did you expect? A dramatic movie villain ready to destroy your empire?" "After Victoria, I think I've come to expect the worst from people." Maya pulled him onto the sofa, snuggling up against him. "Not everyone has a hidden agenda, Sebastian. Sometimes people just want a chance to get to know your family, like your parents are giving me a chance." "Exactly, although my mother is still convinced that you need to learn more about Chinese culture before marriage." Sebastian smiled, his hand finding the small curve of Maya's belly. "I'll study all the necessary customs. Our baby will grow up knowing all her heritage, including this new part we've just discovered." "Speaking of inheritance," Maya hesitated. "Do you think we should offer Michael a stake in a company? Legally, he would be entitled. Let's get to know him as a person first," Sebastian replied thoughtfully. "The rest we can sort out later." Outside, the city continued its frenetic pace, oblivious to the family dramas unfolding in its skyscrapers and historic apartments. But inside that small apartment in Greenwich Village, 2 people were discovering that sometimes the most painful revelations can pave the way for new beginnings. The message arrived during the Reynolds Enterprises board meeting. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Le Bernardine, come alone." Maya stared at her phone, feeling her stomach turn, and it wasn't just because she was 12 weeks pregnant. "What's up?" Sebastian whispered, noticing her tense expression. Maya just nodded, turning her attention back to the performance in progress. Victoria was making her move just as they had predicted. The question now was, what would her next move be? After the meeting, Maya found Sebastian in his office, showing him the message. His reaction was exactly as she had expected. "Absolutely not," he declared, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "It's too risky. It's our chance to find out exactly what she's planning," Maya argued, taking a seat on the edge of his desk. "Besides, Le Bernardine is a public restaurant. What could she do? Victoria is unpredictable when she feels cornered. And after we found out about Michael, that's exactly why I need to go," Maya interrupted gently. "If she's planning to expose the story about Michael, we need to know how and when." At that moment, Rebecca rushed into the office. "Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you should see this." She held out a tablet showing an article just published in the New York Post. "Reynolds' empire under threat. Sources revealed possible family scandal." "She's testing the waters," Maya observed quickly, reading the vague but suggestive article, leaking little bits of the story to see how the public reacts. Sebastian cursed softly, picking up his phone. "I'll call Michael. He needs to be warned." "No," Maya stopped him. "Let me find Victoria first. If she knows that we're already in contact with Michael, it could precipitate her plans." After a long discussion, it was decided that Maya would go to the meeting, but with security guards discreetly positioned in the restaurant and Rebecca closely monitoring everything. The next morning, Maya adjusted her navy blue blazer. As she entered Le Bernardine, Victoria was already there, impeccable in a white Chanel dress that made a dramatic contrast with her red hair. "Maya, darling," Victoria smiled, that feline smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You look radiant. Pregnancy suits you." Maya sat down calmly, ignoring the veiled provocation. "Let's get straight to the point, Victoria. What do you want?" "To the point, as is typical of you." Victoria took a sip of her champagne. "Very well, I want what's rightfully mine. My place at Reynolds Enterprises." "Your place?" Maya arched an eyebrow. "Based on blackmail and lies, based on an agreement between families," Victoria retorted, her smile faltering. William Reynolds made a promise to my father, a promise that you are preventing from being kept. Times have changed, Victoria. Arranged marriages and shady deals are no longer acceptable. No. Victoria leaned forward. And what would the public fake? If they discovered that the respectable William Reynolds had abandoned an illegitimate child, that he paid to cover up its existence, that he manipulated stocks and contracts to protect his precious secret, Maya kept her expression neutral. Years of corporate negotiations coming in handy right now. And what would the public think if they found out that you tried to sabotage an entire company for revenge, that you conspired with James Porter to falsify documents? Victoria paled slightly. You have no proof. I have all the proof, Victoria, even your correspondence with Richard Morrison. Maya picked up her own phone, showing some of the emails. The question is, how much are you willing to lose in this vendetta? Lose, Victoria laughed, but there was a tremor in her voice. Darling, I have nothing to lose. I already lost everything when Sebastian chose you. That's where you're wrong, Maya replied softly. You still have your reputation, your career. In Milan, your future. Is it worth destroying all that just to hurt Sebastian? For a moment, something vulnerable crossed Victoria's face. You don't understand. It was supposed to be my happy ending, the perfect marriage, the perfect company. Nothing is perfect, Victoria, but some things are real. Maya touched her belly instinctively. What Sebastian and I have is real. The baby is real. The future we're building is real. Victoria watched the gesture, something indefinable in her eyes. You really love him, don't you? More than you've ever been able to. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the soft sound of cutlery and conversations around him. Finally, Victoria picked up her bag. I'm going back to Milan tomorrow, she announced, standing up. But don't think it's over, Maya. Some secrets have a life of their own. Victoria, Maya called out before she walked away. Michael Harrison deserves peace, leaving out of it. One last look was exchanged between the two women, a silent communication of understanding and warning. Then Victoria left, her heels echoing on the marble floor of the restaurant. Maya let out the breath. She hadn't even realized she was holding her hands, shaking slightly as she typed a message to Sebastian. She's backing off for now. The reply came instantly. Go home, we need to talk. Looking out the restaurant window, Maya watched the city that never stopped, reflecting on how life could change so dramatically in a matter of weeks, from financial director to pregnant fiancée, from respected professional to the target of conspiracies. But as she stroked her belly, feeling that unique connection with the life growing inside her, Maya knew that every battle had been worth it, because sometimes the greatest treasures come after the greatest storms. The cafe on the corner of Fifth Avenue was practically empty when Michael Harrison entered, his blue eyes, so similar to Sebastian's, immediately spotting his half-brother at a discreet table at the back. Maya stood next to him, her hands intertwined on the table in a silent gesture of support. Sorry I'm late, Michael said, removing his coat. Traffic from Chicago to here was more complicated than expected. Sebastian stood up, holding out his hand. The handshake between the brothers was firm, laden with decades of untold stories and unasked questions. This is Maya, Sebastian introduced, his voice betraying a slight tremor. My fiancée. In mother tone, Michael added with a small smile, I read about you in the papers. Congratulations. The silence that followed was filled by the waitress bringing more coffee. Maya observed the two men, so different and yet so similar. Michael had the same elegant posture as Sebastian, the same calculated way of studying people. Did Victoria Caldwell contact you? Maya asked, directly breaking the ice. Michael arched an eyebrow, surprised by her frankness. Yes, 3 days ago. She offered a considerable sum for an exclusive interview about my tragic story. Sebastian leaned forward, tense. And I refuse. Michael took a sip of his coffee. I'm not interested in revenge or scandals. I've built my own life, my own career. I don't need the Reynolds name. Maya felt Sebastian relax slightly next to her. Why don't you decide to meet us then? Michael was silent for a moment, his fingers drumming on his cup. Curiosity, perhaps? Or maybe because when my mother died, she made me promise that one day I would try to meet my brother, not for money or status, but because family. Well, family is complicated. William, our father. Sebastian hesitated on the word. He wants to meet you too. He's in hospital recovering from a mild heart attack. I know, Michael pulled an envelope from his inside jacket pocket. He wrote to me this week an 8-page letter explaining his actions, asking for forgiveness. And have you forgiven him? Maya asked softly. I don't know yet. Michael ran his hands over his face, a gesture so familiar that it made Sebastian shudder. It's not easy to forgive someone who has chosen to erase you from existence, but it's also not easy to carry anger for so long. Reynolds Enterprises is undergoing changes, Sebastian commented after a moment. More transparency, fewer secrets from the past. If you want, there's a place for you. In the company, Michael laughed softly. No thanks, I like my job in Chicago, but he hesitated. Maybe we could start with something simple, family dinner once in a while. Maya felt tears forming, damn pregnancy hormones, as she saw the genuine smile that formed on Sebastian's face. Margaret, our mother, Sebastian quickly corrected. She'd love to meet you. In fact, we're planning a traditional engagement. Dinner at Maya's family restaurant next week. A traditional Chinese dinner, Maya explained, smiling. My mother is determined to culturally educate the entire Reynolds family, including the newest member. Michael asked, his eyes softening as he looked at the small curve in Maya's belly. Especially the newest member, Sebastian confirmed, his hand finding Maya's. Which reminds me, we'd like to ask you something. Maya nodded encouragingly, and Sebastian continued. I'd be honored if you'd agree. To be the baby's godfather. I know it's sudden, and we're still getting to know each other. But yes, Michael interrupted, his voice breaking. I would be honored. The moment was interrupted by Maya's phone. It was Rebecca. Victoria has just left from Milan. Sources confirmed that she sold her penthouse in Manhattan. So it's over, Sebastian asked after Maya shared the news. For now, Michael commented. But family is like a river. It can change its course, but it never really stops flowing. Leaving the cafe, the three of them walked together along Fifth Avenue. The fall sun bathed Manhattan in golden hues, and Maya couldn't help thinking about how life had curious ways of bringing people together. You look like her, Michael commented softly to Sebastian. Our mother, Claire, she had the same smile. Sebastian swallowed, clearly moved. I wish I'd known her. She would have liked you, Michael assured him. And she would have loved the idea of being a grandmother. Maya watched the two brothers walking side by side, their silhouettes reflected in the store windows. Family, she thought, really was complicated, but sometimes out of the most unlikely complications, the most beautiful connections emerged. The Golden Palace's private lounge glowed with traditional red lanterns, while the scent of incense and Cantonese dishes filled the air. Maya nervously adjusted her red chipao, embroidered with golden phoenixes, a gift from her mother. For the official engagement dinner, you look beautiful, Sebastian whispered, helping her with one of the buttons at the back. He himself was wearing a traditional black Chinese suit, the result of 3 exhaustive fittings under Linda Chen's strict supervision. I still can't believe we've convinced everyone to come, Maya replied, watching through the ajar door as the guests began to arrive. Michael was one of the first, carrying an elaborate arrangement of white orchids. Margaret Reynolds followed close behind, her natural elegance perfectly matching the navy blue silk dress she had chosen for the occasion. William Reynolds arrived leaning on a cane, still recovering from his heart attack, but his eyes shone with a liveliness that Maya hadn't seen since the whole truth about Michael came out. Beside him, Robert Chen maintained a stoic expression, although Maya had noticed her father rehearsing greetings in English throughout the previous week. Linda Chen appeared in the doorway of the changing room. It's time, all the guests have arrived. The traditional Chinese tea ritual was a crucial part of the engagement dinner, and Maya felt the weight of generations of tradition as she and Sebastian knelt before their parents, respectfully pouring tea in a small porcelain cups. Yam Sing, Robert Chen solemnly proclaimed when it was his turn to receive the cup, using the Cantonese term for health. But he had practiced tirelessly. Linda's proud smile on hearing her husband make the effort didn't go unnoticed by anyone. When it was William and Margaret's turn, Maya noticed Sebastian's hands trembling slightly, but then Michael approached, placing a hand on his younger brother's shoulder in a silent gesture of support, and the tension seemed to dissipate. For our family, William declared as he received his cup, his gaze alternating meaningfully between his two sons. All its parts finally united. The dinner that followed was a harmonious fusion of cultures. In traditions, elaborate Cantonese dishes were served alongside French wine selected by Margaret. Michael shared stories of his childhood in Chicago, making everyone laugh with his clumsy attempts at using chopsticks. Maya discreetly called out to Linda during a break between courses, I need to tell you something. In the small office at the back of the restaurant, Maya took an envelope from her handbag. Yesterday's ultrasound. She held out the image to her mother. It's twins. Linda Chin put her hands to her mouth, tears shining in her eyes. Ouch, 2 grandchildren at once. Sebastian doesn't know yet, Maya confessed. I wanted to tell him at dinner tonight. Your grandmother always said that twins are a sign of great luck. Linda hugged her daughter carefully. And look at our family now, Americans, Chinese siblings, so long separated, all united under one roof. Back in the lounge, Maya found Sebastian in animated conversation with Michael about different investment strategies. The sight of the two brothers, so naturally close despite their short time together, made her heart warm. Sebastian, she called softly, taking his hand. I have something to tell you. Silence gradually fell over the room as Maya removed the ultrasound envelope from her cheepow. Sebastian's hands trembled slightly as he opened the image, his blue eyes widening as he realized what he was seeing too. His voice faltered. We're going to have twins, Maya added, smiling through the tears that were beginning to form. The explosion of joy that followed was instantaneous. Margaret hugged William, both of them crying openly. Michael raised his glass and a spontaneous toast, while Linda quickly began calculating how many traditional dress sets she would need to order. Robert Chen, to everyone's surprise, was the first to speak up in English. 2 grandchildren, double the luck. Later that evening, when the last guests have left and only the closest family remained, Maya observed the peculiar group they had become. Michael and Sebastian were comparing baby photos on their phones, discussing the Reynolds genetic characteristics. Margaret and Linda exchanged recipes for traditional soups for pregnant women, while William and Robert shared a rare moment of mutual understanding about the joys and worries of being a grandparent. What are you thinking about? Sebastian asked, noticing her contemplative gaze. About how unpredictable life is, Maya replied, stroking her belly where her twins were growing. A few months ago, I was worried about Victoria destroying everything, and now we have more family than we ever imagined, he added, kissing her forehead softly. The sound of laughter and conversation filled the Golden Palace late into the night, as 2 families once separated by oceans of cultural differences and undisclosed secrets celebrated the future they were building together. The soft sound of the piano filled the hall of the Plaza Hotel as Maya adjusted her wedding dress, a perfect fusion of Western and Eastern tradition with white silk details and gold embroidery that her mother had insisted on adding personally. Through the mirror, she could see her 5-month belly where the twins were growing, protected and loved. Ready? Linda Chen asked, helping her daughter with the veil. Her eyes shone with restrained tears. Almost, Maya replied, touching the jade necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. I still can't believe we managed to organize everything in 2 months. When you have 2 determined mothers, Margaret Reynolds commented, entering the room with a smile. Nothing is impossible. The last few weeks have been a whirlwind of preparations, with Linda and Margaret working together in surprising harmony. The wedding would be a celebration of the union, not just of 2 people, but of 2 cultures, 2 families, and all the stories that had brought them there. Michael knocked softly on the door. Sebastian's having a bit of a panic attack at the altar. Something about the Mandarin vows his mother made him memorize. Maya laughed, remembering the night Sebastian had spent practicing the pronunciation, determined to honor his family's traditions. Tell him that if he can take on Victoria Caldwell, he can take on anything. The plaza's main hall was decorated with an elegant mix of white orchids and red peonies. The guests occupied their chairs, an eclectic mix of Reynolds Enterprises executives, extended Chun family who had flown in from San Francisco, and close friends who had supported them during their most difficult times. When the music started, an orchestrated version of an ancient Chinese love song, Maya felt her heart race. Robert Chun was waiting at the door, looking as dapper as ever in his traditional suit. Baba, she whispered, taking his arm. My little warrior, he replied in Mandarin, his voice breaking. Ready for your next battle? Maya smiled, remembering all the battles she had faced in recent months. Victoria, the Reynolds secrets, family traditions. Each challenge had strengthened her, preparing her for this moment. Sebastian was waiting at the altar, his blue eyes shining with barely contained emotion. Next to him, Michael smiled proudly as best man, the ring held in his hands. William Reynolds watched from the front row, his serene expression reflecting the peace he had finally found after revealing his deepest secrets. The ceremony was conducted in English and Mandarin, with Sebastian surprising everyone by pronouncing his vows in Maya's mother tongue with only a slight accent. When it came time for Maya to make her vow, she chose words that spoke not only of love, but of family truth and redemption. Sebastian, she began, her voice clear and firm. You taught me that true love is not just about perfect moments, but about facing storms together. Our story began amid secrets and doubts, but blossomed in a truth and trust. One promise to be not only your wife, but your partner in all the challenges that life brings us. Rebecca City, among the guests, discreetly wiped away a tear. Next to her, Richard Morrison, now officially retired from the board, but still part of the extended family, smiled, remembering how his own story of redemption was intertwined with theirs. During the reception, Michael stood up for his best man speech. When I found out I had a brother, he began, his voice heavy with emotion. I never imagined that I would also gain a whole family, Maya. You've not only brought happiness to Sebastian, but you've helped us heal wounds we didn't even know we had. Linda Chun surprised everyone by standing up next, speaking in carefully rehearsed English. In Chinese culture, we say that marriage is not just the union of two people, but of two families. Today, I see that sometimes we need courage to break traditions and create new ones. The party continued well into the night with gourmet Western dishes served alongside traditional dim. Some Sebastian and Maya danced their first waltz under hundreds of red lanterns, their silhouettes casting intertwined shadows on the polished floor. Happy, Sebastian whispered during the dance. More than I ever thought possible, Maya replied, feeling the babies move as if they were celebrating too. Our children will grow up in a family where there are no more secrets, just love and many, many traditions to learn. He joked, making her laugh. Later, when the moon was high in the Manhattan sky, Maya observed the scene around her, Michael teaching a few dance steps to his niece Jessica, the daughter of the sister who was once estranged from the Chin family, Margaret, and Linda exchanging recipes and stories like old friends William and Robert, sharing an expensive Scotch whiskey, their cultural differences forgotten in favor of the joy of the moment. What are you thinking about? Sebastian asked, noticing her contemplative gaze. About how love has the power to heal, she replied, resting her head on his shoulder. To turn strangers into family, to turn pain into strength, and to create miracles. He added, his hand gently touching the belly where their children were growing. Outside, Manhattan shone under the night sky, its lights reflecting in the plaza's windows like thousands of earthly stars. It was a city of infinite possibilities where love stories blossomed in the midst of urban chaos, where ancient traditions mingled with modern dreams, and where a family, once divided by secrets, found its way back to unity through the transformative power of true love.